you voted for some of the aid that's been used to massacre children and innocents. You have backed Israel, as far as I can tell, from your voting record at almost every turn.
Rarely am I ever so blown away by an interview that I have to do a video on the interview, but here we are. This was a fantastic interview from Breaking Points, particularly Krystal Ball, where they interviewed Elissa Slotkin, the Democratic senator, who is a mainstream Democrat. In other words, she is on the right. In any other political context, any other country, she'd be in a right-wing party. But in the U.S., she's in the Democratic Party. And she was grilled in a way that I don't think she expected, because this is not the kind of interview lawmakers normally have when they're on most places. So I'm going to get to a few clips here. And of course, I will link to the full interview below the video. I do think the full thing is worth watching because I'm just taking out a few clips here. But let me get to the first clip. To me, this is so informative of Elissa Slotkin's worldview, where this is a brief clip here, but they're discussing Zoran Mamdani, and she discusses why she isn't politically aligned with him.
I can have plenty of disagreements with what I've heard Mr. Mamdani propose, and I do. But that message coming out of that election...
What do you disagree with?
Just, my family was a fourth generation hot dog business. I am here because we live the American dream through capitalism.
So you being born into wealth is why you can't support universal childcare, free bus service, freezing the rent, or city-owned grocery stores, which is the Zoran Mamdani platform for New York City. It's amazing that Zoran and Elissa Slotkin are in the same party, because their entire ethos is completely different. This shows you the view that a lot of Democrats, especially Democratic senators, have. It's this protection around capitalism from a very privileged perspective, where they clearly, using her own words, she's not fighting for working class people. She has a perspective of being born into wealth, and that's what she's defending. So, it's just, to me, it's such a giveaway that they're not even conscious of what they are telling people. But this gets to the next clip here, and a lot of this is going to be about Gaza. I'll get to that in a bit. But this clip here is about, why did Slotkin go on the show? I think this is a great question from Krystal Ball. And again, it gives us a lot of insight into the thought process here.
Forgive me if this is impolite. I'm curious why you wanted to talk to us.
What do you mean?
Well, we don't have actually a lot of senators, especially ones who have very different ideology than us, reach out. So I'm curious what your goal was and why you thought to come here.
Well, first of all, I think you have a good audience. I mean, right?
We agree.
If you appealed to 4 friends on YouTube or whatever, then I probably wouldn't be here. I think your show appealed to me as I was being pitched because you guys don't agree. And I am very focused. My dad was a lifelong Republican, my mom a lifelong Democrat. Michiganders want to get back to a place where we can disagree on politics and not have it be so bitter.
All right, so I want to give Elissa Slotkin credit here for even going on the show. Most mainstream Democrats do not go on YouTube shows, but I don't think she really understood what she was walking into. To me, this comes off as somebody who thought she was walking into the YouTube version of Morning Joe, where you have, one Democrat, one Republican, though, I know, Joe Scarborough now says he's Democrat, whatever. But you know what I'm saying, where you have two essentially Washington mainstream perspectives, and that's what she was walking into. That's not what this is. Krystal Ball has a very principled position, or principled positions in how she discusses issues. Saagar, I don't really know what his motivations are sometimes. To be honest, I don't watch the show very often when he's on, because I have a very hard time listening to him. But that's a whole other conversation. Slotkin here, I don't think she really saw what was coming, because especially when they get into Gaza, which is the next few clips now, there is consensus between Saagar and Krystal on this issue. And Elissa Slotkin really comes off as somebody who is both out of touch and amoral in her responses. So here is Krystal's question on Gaza. The framing on this is fantastic.
Listen, I'm a YouTuber. I have my words, that's all I have.
Yeah.
But you're a United States Senator. You're not the president, but you have power. So what are you going to do Because so far what we've seen, I mean, you voted for some of the aid that's been used to massacre children and innocents. You have backed Israel, as far as I can tell, from your voting record at almost every turn. You voted for a definition of anti-Semitism that would, codify anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism. You voted as a member of the House to sanction the ICC for indicting Benjamin Netanyahu, who you just admitted is a war criminal, by your own words. So are you going to join Senator Angus King, Senator Bernie Sanders in saying no more aid to this country that is committing war crimes against innocent civilians?
I think the first thing, if you're asking about what to do with power, and I would offer that right now Democrats own nothing in Washington. So
don't play powerless with me. You're a United States senator. There are things you can do.
In terms of who runs our foreign policy, I just think it's interesting, right, that there was a ton of protests when Democrats were in charge.
There was a protest in Manhattan yesterday.
Okay. I think it's fair to say, just to be honest, that back and forth, like the number of protests that go on now versus before.
Well, they were part of your political coalition.
Well, not to mention, I mean, Senator Slotkin,
that's fair.
Obviously, I'm here.
Yeah.
I was very upset over the Biden administration policy. And as you can tell, I'm very upset over the Trump administration policy.
Yeah.
So let's deal not in strawman, but me in the here and now.
In terms of what, so.
All right, so I'll get to the rest of that answer where Slotkin puts herself in a horrible position again. But this was, the framing on this is something you simply do not see in any other legacy media, broadcast, cable news context. Their voting record, Elissa Slotkin's voting record, voting completely with Israel on absolutely everything, while at the same time Slotkin is trying to claim that she cares about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza when she is doing nothing to put pressure on the actual Israeli government. It's an obvious and clear conflict that there is no answer to, except for the fact that Elissa Slotkin does not act as a senator from a principled position. And we're going to get to that very thing, how she discusses what motivates her, which goes to exposing the absurdity of all of this, of how these politicians operate. But let me get to the rest of her answer here.
To me, the most important thing is a pressurized campaign to get aid into people who are starving. That to me is the number one, because that's the one is urgent and today. And that.
But will you cut off aid to Israel so long as they're committing crimes against humanity?
There is a difference between a weapon to protect a country from incoming missiles versus other type. Offensive and defensive weapons are different.
So would you support offensive weapons ban? Like, would you stop any offensive aid to Israel?
That certainly, to me, would be a place to look.
Do you understand how insane this is? You are discussing the most important thing is getting humanitarian aid into this place that there's a genocide going on. Yet, the ones committing the genocide, you will not even consider or even stake claim that you want to stop offensive weapons when they're using those weapons to commit the genocide that you now are saying is so important we have to bring this aid in. Yet you don't want to stop what's causing the genocide. It is like there is no defense of this position. And I love how clearly exposed this is, and that this is the mainstream position for Democrats and Republicans. So Republicans, of course, we've seen how absolutely blatantly disgusting their position on this is and has been forever. There's no debating that. The reason why, as Slotkin points out earlier, she gets defensive about the level of protests, I guess, which I haven't seen numbers on, pre-Trump and post-Trump. But the reason why she may have felt more pressure when Biden was in power is because people understand that Democrats are at least supposed to have some sort of moral clarity when it comes to a genocide. There's already the assumption that, of course, the Republicans don't care. Like, there's no denying that. But there's going to be at least some senators, some Congress people that do care in the Democratic Party, and we have seen that, but there isn't enough of them to actually mount a real pressure campaign. So this idea that your focus right now is humanitarian aid, yet you will not condemn or cut off the weapons to the country committing the genocide, it is just absolutely nuts. This gets to, so I actually want to play a clip here. It's a quick clip from the Pod Save America guys, because this is, a very mainstream Democratic podcast that is mainstream in the sense of the Democratic voter. And this is their position on this.
And I don't think Democratic candidates should take money from AIPAC or vote to fund military support for Israel anymore. Like, I really don't. In this government, absolutely not. And that especially includes, I think, the next Democratic nominee for president.
Things I want to see Democrats at least calling for is cutting off military assistance to Israel. It's a rich country, by the way. They don't need our $3 billion a year. And hands up, right? Barack Obama signed a 10-year MOU for $3.3 billion a year. Like, so we're part of the problem here. Let's correct it. I would like to see talk about sanctioning Israeli government officials who use genocidal rhetoric or who talk about ethnic cleansing openly. We should support a ceasefire resolution at the UN. We should demand that international press be allowed into the Gaza Strip to report on what's happening without an IDF minder. It's insane. The press still can't go into Gaza and cover what's happening. And I also think, like, there has to be a total mindset change in the Democratic Party. When the war ends, we are not going back to the pre-October 7th status quo, because it's not where the party is. It's not where the world is. We're not going to shovel billions a year in military aid. We're not going to veto every effort to recognize a Palestinian state at the UN. We should not take money from AIPAC. And, like, I will hold out hope for better political leadership in the U.S. and in Israel. But we have to also recognize that the Biden era hug Bibi Netanyahu strategy has to be thrown in the trash can for fucking ever. Netanyahu is a bad actor. He's continuing a war for political purposes. He bombs Lebanon when he wants to. He bombs Iran when he wants to. He bombs Syria when he wants to. This is not a partner we can count on. This is not someone who is, like, leading to calm and stability in the region, which should be a core interest.
Like, at this point, cutting off military funding for a government that is starving 2 million people and advertising how they're ethnically cleansing the Palestinians seems like the least we can do.
I think this is great insight. Seeing a podcast like this espouse what should be just the bare minimum obvious position that the Democratic Party should have, when they are too far to the left of where the current Democratic Party is, it shows you how far right the Democratic Party is. When you have polls coming out showing Democrats are even less popular than Donald Trump is, even though Donald Trump is very unpopular, it shows you that the party has lost everybody. The Democratic base does not like the Democratic Party, because they don't see a party that is actually fighting Trump properly or even having staked proper moral human rights positions on an issue like Gaza. This is like, I don't think Democrats truly understand how screwed they are if they maintain this defense of a genocidal Israeli government. Let me get to the last clip here. This is where that very thing is brought up. Is this a genocide? It, of course, is. But here's how Elissa Slotkin reacts to it.
B'Tselem and another Israeli human rights organization joined the global consensus, Amnesty International, some 800 scholars. There was a piece from an Israeli scholar in the New York Times in saying this is a genocide. Do you accept, even Marjorie Taylor Greene yesterday came out and said it's a genocide. Do you accept that? And if you do, I mean, what responsibility does a United States senator have? For this is a nation that, you know, we send every year billions of dollars to aid that you have, you know, voted for and supported. Like, what responsibility does a United States senator have to prevent genocide and to stop genocide that we see ongoing?
We have a responsibility up till today to ensure that food is getting in.
Is it
so
a
that
genocide?
People don't starve. I don't know that I'd use that term,
Why?
but it is violating the law of war.
Why don't you use the term, though?
Because I think, you know, it's, to me, do I think it's ethnic cleansing, which is what I think of in genocide? I don't know if it meets that definition.
They're announcing
but didn't you
it.
say it earlier that it was ethnic cleansing? You said that they wanted to force it. I mean, this is open from the Israeli government. Like, they're saying it. Their
And from
Minister
Trump,
of National
too.
Security, they come out and they're like, we don't need shells. We need shells, not food. And we need to encourage migration. They're saying
You're not going to get me to
Yeah.
support what the Israeli government is saying right now. Right. I think the point I was trying to make is it's not just about, like, we have relationships with nations over time, regardless of who their leaders are.
So it's not just about the genocide. We have relationships with neighbors, regardless of what they're doing. This exposes how Washington operates, how people like Elissa Slotkin and lawmakers like her, regardless of if they're Republican, Democrats, how the vast majority of them operate. They respect these friendships regardless of what their friend is doing. To think you know better, like, to not acknowledge this as a genocide and think you know better than human rights organizations like Human Rights Watch, B'Tselem in Israel, Amnesty International, the UN, that you, Elissa Slotkin, you have a better analysis of what is or isn't a genocide or ethnic cleansing than they do. Like, come on. She obviously knows what it is. She does not want to state it because she is prioritizing the relationship with the country of Israel over what they are committing in a genocide in Gaza. It is gross, it's disgusting, but it takes interviews like this where these actual questions are brought up and they're drilled upon again and again and again to get to the heart of what the problem is here. So again, fantastic interview from Breaking Points, and I don't expect Elissa Slotkin to decide to go back on that show. And honestly, I would expect a lot of other lawmakers to avoid the show now because they know that they're going to be drilled on this. This is unfortunately the reality, is when they're able to escape these sorts of questions, or I should say avoid them altogether by going on places like CNN, MSNBC, and stay put in their very comfortable spaces of what they're normally asked from a right-wing perspective, then they're not faced with questions of morality or principles. They are simply operating within the confines of what is already just normal Washington culture in the acceptance of a genocide for the benefit of your relationship with that country. I hope a lot of people see this interview. From what I'm seeing in the numbers here, they are. So this is good that this is getting out, and I will link to it below the video. It is definitely worth the watch.